Good afternoon and welcome to OnTarget Group's webinar, Selling to the Federal Government. My name is Lenny Bendell and I'm a senior principal at OnTarget Group, Inc. and we specialize in federal marketing. And you'll bear with me a second, folks, because we've just had a freeze on our screen. There we go. So I'm Lenny Bendell, and with me today is Greg Warrick. And Greg is president of OnTarget Group, and we've been selling to the federal government for over 20 years. Before we get started today, let me remind you all to be sure the volume on your speakers is set and your microphones are muted. Otherwise, you may become an unwilling guest speaker. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to enter them in the chat box on your lower screen, and we will try to respond at the end of the session. Some of you have been attempting to sell to the government for a while, and others are brand new to the experience. So let me assure you that the frustrations are real at whatever stage your federal marketing is at, but so can the rewards. Dealing with the federal government is not much different on paper than dealing with the commercial sector. But reality, that's pretty different. So before we delve today into specifics, let's note what we're going to talk about today. We're going to look at what the government buys, how they buy, contracting vehicles that they use, understanding the buyer mentality. Who are the buyers? Positioning your product line for government purchases. Finding the opportunities. GSA schedule. Is it worth having? What schedule should you be on? Do you have socioeconomic advantages? What's a prime contractor? And when and how to team with that prime contractor. A couple of other important notes about dealing with the federal government you won't find in the commercial sector. The government requires a significant amount of paperwork from the contracting stage right through the end of a project to the final stage. The quality of that reporting will be significant in whether or not you get additional business from government buyers. It's also important to understand that government buyers are risk adverse. Therefore, you're always going to have to overcome the risk objections, and you have to do that by presenting your best face. So, what does the government buy? The federal government basically buys everything. It is the largest consumer of goods and services in the United States, spending almost $474 billion in 2016 alone through contracting vehicles. Regardless of whether it's paper goods, aircraft carriers, or anything in between, the government buys it. Think of the purchasing catalog of the United States government as the largest department store in the world. There's simply nothing you can think of that the government doesn't purchase. Let's look at just one contracting vehicle and the government agencies can use and see what they purchased in 2016. The total purchases were $32 billion. The top three categories where those funds were spent were professional services, $8.2 billion. Security services, $1.3 billion. And the lion killer, IT services, $14.7 billion. The remaining $7 billion was spread among 29 other categories of goods or services. Now, the interesting thing about government purchases is that when you take out the heavy hardware defense items, like an F-18 or aircraft carriers, what you're left with is emulating fairly well what we just looked at in GSA. In other words, half of all dollars spent by the U.S. government go towards IT. Utilizing the data available to us is allowing us to fairly well project the expectations of industry sales as it relates to the total purchase dollars. The other side of this equation is to also understand there are over 450,000 businesses just like you registered to do business with the government and SAM. SAM is the system for award management. So as competition is heavy, there's a lot of it, and there's a lot of sellers in the government marketplace. Sellers must use every opportunity to position their products and understand the motivations of how buyers make awards and how to find the opportunities to sell. You have to do things like competitive analysis. You have to know where your product stands compared to other sellers. Know who the buyers are and when they're going to buy and what they're looking for specifically. Where and how to find the opportunities and when it is more prudent to team with a prime contractor than doing it on your own. These are questions you have to ask. These resources that you're looking at are places where you can find the opportunities every day. So how does the government buy? Well, up to the close of a sale, selling in the federal market is essentially the same as selling in the commercial market. You have to find out who buys what you sell. You have to go knock on their door. You have to be prepared for rejection. And then you have to figure out how to overcome the objection. As in the commercial market, businesses must sell to the end users of the product or the service they sell. The difference with the federal market is that it is critical that you have a way to close the sale. You must have a contracting vehicle available. Now, your congressman, your small business administration office, they can be marginally helpful in assisting you to win federal business. However, the bottom line is that your company will only win federal contract dollars if it puts an emphasis and focus on sales efforts. Relying on others for you to give you the delusion that your business is on its way to a sale, well, you wind up just spinning your wheels. The basic steps in the federal sales process are as follows. Identify the federal end user or contracting officer who needs what you sell. For commodities, the purchasing decision is usually a contracting officer. For technology products, services and solutions, the purchasing decision is generally a program manager, a facility manager, an engineer, or a professional with program responsibilities. Finding buyers takes time and research. Establish a relationship with the decision maker. If your company offers commodities, relationships will probably be delivered on the telephone. For those companies offering solutions or services, the relationship will most likely be established in person. Relationships are built between the buyer and the seller through mutual agreement on a solution. Those probably will not be developed on the phone. For those companies offering solutions or services, the relationship will most likely be established in person. Relationships are built between the buyer and the seller through mutual agreement on a solution, the establishment of trust, and assurance that your solution will mitigate risk in the future. Close the sale with a procedure or a contracting mechanism that is consistent with the rules for competition in the public sector. The procedure for closing the sales is normally dictated and implemented by the contracting officer, unless the purchase is a small one and it'll be made with a federal credit card. Now, as we discussed earlier, the federal sales process is identical to the commercial sales process, up to the point of closing the sale. And this is where the rubber hits the road, and where most novices run into roadblocks, particularly for buys that exceed $25,000. Any purchase that is over $25,000 must be made through a competitive bidding process, or through what's called a blanket IDIQ. That's an indefinite quantity, indefinite time contract, and it has negotiated prices. When the need for a product or a service arises, the end user goes to a list, and he looks at the pre-approved vendors, which are multi-vendor contract holders, and he makes a purchase quickly and efficiently. The time and the expense that's involved with a public bid are avoided, and that's because the vendors holding this type of contract have already agreed upon price lists, which become the basis for bids on individual task orders, and these become available immediately for delivery. The federal government will, for large purchases, typically favor multi-vendor contracts over public bids because the public bidding process requires use of scarce procurement staff and takes far too long. Since the majority of businesses hoping to enter the federal market do not have a multi-vendor contract in place, they're operating at a disadvantage when they try to compete in the federal arena. So the most popular and widely used multi-vendor contract is a GSA schedule. Vendors who do not hold such contracts are often forced to act as a subcontractor. Vendors acting as subcontractors to primes have to pay points to the prime contractor and rarely have the opportunity to deal with the buyer. For these and other reasons, the uninitiated should start the process of obtaining a GSA schedule contract immediately upon deciding to enter into that market, because it can take 3 to 9 months to get an award of such a contract. One of the first things to learn about selling the government is that there's 2 different buyers that you need to be aware of. There is the end user. That's the person who generally is responsible for specifying what to purchase, and they specialize in more technical products or services. And then there's the contracting or procurement officer. He's the one responsible to actually make the purchase. Many times you first need to deal with the end user to get your product specified rather than the contracting officer. Government buyers have a variety of contracting vehicles available to them to make these purchases. And Greg is going to discuss that a little bit further detail when he comes up. You also need to be aware of the basis for awards, such as best value versus best price. Depending on the terminology in the request for quotation, the basis can provide the contracting officer with significant latitude on how they award contracts and whom to. Remember that best value does not necessarily mean best or lowest price. Contracting officers will be looking for a variety of factors in making awards. Here are just some to be careful about: price, quality, features and benefits, delivery time, past performance. These last items are the very reasons that COs like to use contracting vehicles where they can, because there are advantages for both the buyer and the seller. The government gets the benefit of not having to advertise the potential award. There is less paperwork on the contracting officer's part. The contractors have already been vetted to do business with the government. There's quicker turnaround time to actually see the contract. It's also far less expensive for review. The agency risk of exposure to poor performance is minimized. And conversely, the contractor also has benefits with using these award vehicles. Generally, competition is more limited. It is less costly to place your bid. And final decisions come a lot quicker. Now, Greg is going to lead the next 3 sections of the webinar, and they include more details on the government contracting vehicles, understanding the buyer mentality, and who are the buyers. So, Greg, take it away.
Good afternoon. We are now going to further discuss the various contracting vehicles and why it is important to focus on the ones that provide less competition and greater probability of a contract award. As mentioned previously, the types of contracts are full and open, multi-award, GWAC, social economic set-asides, small purchases, and credit card sales. We will start our discussion with full and open. Full and open can be difficult for both the contracting officer and the respondents. Due to workload and length of time and review process, contracting officers try to avoid them when possible. Full and open have the following characteristics. First of all, they must be advertised in Federal Business Opportunities, FBO. They normally have a life cycle of a minimum of 6 to 12 months to process, sometimes even longer. They usually generate numerous responses. Proposal process is costly for both government and vendors. Awards normally go to best value rather than lowest price, and used primarily for large purchases. One of the abbreviated purchase vehicles that we're going to discuss is the multi-award schedule. The most commonly recognized multi-award schedule is the GSA's Federal Supply Schedule. The characteristics of these contracting vehicles are as follows. The participants must be qualified in advance by submitting necessary paperwork and being evaluated on price and technical factors. There is limited competition due to pre-qualification. They provide a quicker turnaround process and can take as little as a couple weeks, and awards can be made within a week of submittal. These awards normally go to the lowest technical acceptable bidder. Another way the government streamlines the bid and response process is with government-wide acquisition contracts, commonly referred to as GWACs. A GWAC starts out as a full and open for initial award. A group of vendors is selected, usually a very small group, and then these GWACs are agency specifics, like for the Army, the Navy, the Department of Interior. Pricing and scopings are predefined, but some pricing flexibility downward is allowed when bidding tasks. All bidding is restricted on tasks to the GWAC awarded contract holders, which cuts down on the bidders and on the task. This makes the award process quicker for the government and less costly for them. Some primary examples of GWAC are Navy Seaport E, Eagle, Next Gen, Millennium, and GovWorks. In order to cut down on time and labor for the government purchasers, they also do small purchases, which can limit competition on bids of under $25,000. These small purchases only require 3 responders or bidders to meet the requirement. They result in quicker turnaround, as a contract can be awarded in a couple of days. These are usually used for products or basic services only. The final method of purchase is the government credit cards. These are used for small purchases, usually under the micro threshold of $3,000. This enables the buyer to make quick purchases without having to go through the normal bidding process. Now, I'd like you to understand the bidder's mentality. If you want to be successful in selling to the government, you need to understand the buyers and the influencers. The influencer is the program manager or end user, and the buyer is usually the contracting officer, but also could be a purchasing agent. The influencers are concerned about meeting their requirements, and they're responsible for the technical specifications of the product or service being offered. Their main issue are, does it match the specifications that are necessary to accomplish my mission? Then they look at what is the past performance history of the vendor. Do they have the necessary background of performance to provide the product or service? And finally, can the product service be added with no or a minimum amount of disruption to the mission in a timely manner? The buyer or the contracting officer has some of the same concerns plus some different ones. He's looking to find the lowest qualified price that meets the program manager's needs. However, he is also concerned that the vendor will be able to deliver to the specifications the product or service. Otherwise, the influencer will second guess why he chose a vendor that did not deliver what was specified in the contract. Since contracting officers are risk adverse and have concerns about new vendors' ability to fulfill the requirements of the contract, the performance on contract has to also be one of the main criteria by which they are measured and which their job performance is measured. Therefore, they are unwilling to take risk in making awards. You need to know who your buyers are. There are 3 different types of buyers: contracting officers, purchasing agents, and program managers. The primary buyer who handles the larger transactions are contracting officers. All complex purchases and any purchase over $100,000 are handled by these contracting officers. Contracting officers are responsible for contract review, awards, FAR and DFAR compliance, and award determination. These contracting officers can be either warranted or non-warranted. The larger sales are handled by warranted contracting officers. Warranted contracting officers are experienced CEOs and require advanced training and a certain number of years' experience. I want to give the limits for the contracting officers. Non-warranted are only limited to purchases under $1 million. Warranted level 1 also have purchasing power up to $1 million. Warranted level 2 up to $10 million, and warranted level 3 from $10 million to actually unlimited for some of them combined in the U.S. government. The next type of purchasers is the buyers, purchasing agent. Purchasing agents make commodity purchases only. They normally make purchases on a best price that meets the specification basis. They have limited flexibility in purchases. Finally, the final type of purchases is the program manager themselves. They normally make small purchases only, and those purchases are either through a government credit card or via the $25,000 small purchase thresholds system.
We're now going to talk about positioning your product line for government purchases. So what is it that you have to do? Well, you have to create a government marketing plan. You have to know the differences between you and your competition. Are you apples or oranges, or are you both guys selling the same thing? You have to be able to communicate both with the buyer and the end user. And you do this via emails, telephone, trade shows, agency networking events, one-on-one meetings with decision makers and influencers. When possible, you want to try and help develop the contract specs and those set-asides. And if you lose an award, you want to know why. So you want to request a debriefing. Well, how do you find the opportunities to even bid on? By conducting market research, you can find out which federal agencies are procuring what you offer. Gathering information about your federal target market should be your first step towards increasing your federal sales. The Federal Procurement Data Center is part of the U.S. General Services Administration, and it operates and maintains the FPDS, the Federal Procurement Data System. The FPDS is the statistical repository of all the information that is on contracts of $25,000 or more, and it contains summary data on contracts of less than $25,000. Now, FPDS is great because it can identify who bought what, from whom, for how much, and where they are. It basically tells you who the buyers are. By researching this database, you can find potential customers. If you know a particular agency contracts for a service that you can provide, there's your contact information. You can, by signing up to receive automatic notifications with FBO, which is Federal Business Opportunities, procurement information, which gives you solicitation number, selected organizations and product service classifications. Vendors can react much more quickly to procurement opportunities because they're better informed. Vendors can also search for procurements by solicitation number, date, classification code, agencies, and even archive solutions. FedBiz Ops allows you to be more proactive than FPDS. How? Because FBO lets you see a job before it's been awarded. If you know that an agency is posting a solicitation, you can let them know before award that you can provide that type of service, and if you have a preferred method of contracting. Other resources that can help you identify business: the Federal Agency Forecast, usaspending.gov, GSA Schedule Sales Queries. These are all great tools, and if you spend the time to learn how to use them, you will be able to mine data out of them that will be very, very useful in helping you set yourself on the path to success. Basically, GSA enters into agreements with vendors for a predetermined price and specification of products or service. Now, GSA receives a fee from you of 0.75% of any invoice from the vendor to support its efforts. And the reason for that is simple. GSA is a self-funded organization. It gets no funding from the budget. Schedules refer to industrial categories of products and services. When you receive a contract, it is for specific schedules. So a vendor with a Schedule 70, IT, cannot bid on a product request for Schedule 51V, which is hardware. Now, what should you know about GSA multiple award contracts? Well, 80% of general GSA MOS contracts go to small business. More than $40 billion a year flows through GSA schedule contracts. Approximately 90% of government needs were procured outside of GSA schedule contracts. GSA has over 19,000 vendor contracts. Approximately 40% of the 19,000 schedule holders get government business. About 5% of the GSA schedule contracts win 80% of the dollars. The median time to a first award is between 8 and 9 months. And in general, awards for more complex products and services take more time than awards for commodity-type products. So what are the challenges to winning awards? Competing for and winning government contracts is costly, both in time and resources. Not all government agencies use GSA MAS contracts for their procurement. And allocating time and money and other resources and a willingness to stay the course by vendors is what is needed to be successful. The eBuy system. eBuy is an electronic request for quote solution. It's been designed to facilitate the submission of quotes for the full range of professional services. Now, eBuy is a powerful tool. It can be used by any GSA Federal Supply Service Schedule contractor on GSA Advantage. Only contractors with a specific schedule can offer quotes through this electronic medium. The federal agencies that can use this information and they make best value purchasing decisions. So how does eBuy work? Using the eBuy system, buyers may prepare and post an RFQ for specific services and products for a designated period of time. Once posted, GSA Advantage schedule contractors get an email notice informing them that an RFQ has been posted and a quote has been requested. Now, each RFQ is assigned a category and a business solution, marketing and media or engineering by the buyer. The category assignment determines which contractor will receive the email notice. GSA contractors must pre-select the categories they wish to receive RFQ notices for. Once the RFQ has closed, buyers can then accept the quotes that represent the best value. Buyers may then issue an order to any contractor whose quote was accepted. Now let's talk about schedule sales queries for a minute. Schedule sales queries are just that. It is an ability that vendors have to go into the GSA library system and search for data that will help them understand their positioning through archival records. There are reports that you can pull from the GSA system. They can tell you the volume of business in a schedule by a SIN number, or a particular contractor, or a particular period of time. These reports provide significant information when you're looking for how much was spent in a category. Who was the biggest volume contractor? GSA Advantage, the catalog of goods and services. It is the online shopping and ordering system that provides access to thousands of contractors and millions of supplies. Anyone may browse on GSA Advantage to view and compare the variety of products and services. Federal government employees can make purchases on GSA Advantage 3 different ways: a government-wide commercial purchase card, a GSA activity address code, or a Department of Defense activity address code. State and local government entities can now use GSA Advantage to purchase products and services under both the Cooperative Purchase Agreement Program and the Disaster Recovery Purchasing Program. Payments from state and local government purchases on GSA Advantage are limited to credit card payments, and they must use a state or local government-issued card. In addition to the variety of federal resources available to help you with your research, there are also a number of private companies who aggregate federal, state, and local opportunities on a subscription basis. So, what is a successful marketing strategy? We want you to be successful, and we can assist you in every legal way possible. But just as you market your commercial business, you must market your business to government customers. You have to establish a marketing strategy at the outset that will help you reach your target audience. So, where do you start? First, you have to understand your company's value proposition. What can you do to help solve an agency problem? Remember, what value your service or product brings to the consider what value your product or service brings to the customer. You have to do the research. You have to figure out who in the government has a requirement for your particular offerings. How does your company help the government meet its goals and its objectives? Can you provide examples of customers your organization has assisted in the past and the corresponding results? What appeal did your product or services have that caused customers to use you in the past? And after understanding your value proposition, evaluate why the agency would buy your product or your service. Get information on their budget. Look at their mission and their goals. Get their organization chart. Then sit down and create a call plan. Maximize your company's web presence. Make sure that you provide the web address that sends the customer directly to your GSA contract information. Additionally, remember to load your company's information to GSA Advantage. If you're not on GSA Advantage, you're not going to be visible to the agencies. I cannot tell you how many clients we have that initially when we came together, we find they've never put their products or services up on GSA Advantage. Therefore, no agency knows that they exist. Next, make sure your company does the following. Target the size and scope of agency opportunities you want to pursue in the next 12, 18, 24 months. Construct a database in which to track federal opportunities, including supplemental information such as names, addresses, and phone numbers of agency contacts and procurement personnel. And many, many times you will find this data either in FPDS on existing contracts or in FBO on the response documents for RFQs, RFIs, and sources sought. Prepare additional print and online materials marketing your company. Obtain copies of any existing contracts that you would like to have had, so you know not only who got them, but what they got, what they sold, how much for, and when that contract expires. Contact procurement, technical, and program manager personnel and start building relationships with them. Attend workshops to further develop presentation skills and better understand the federal purchasing process and improve your proposal preparation skills. The federal government is very good in offering to its vendors, especially to small businesses, assistance through a variety of their organizations, especially their small business offices, the abilities to have vendor days at various military bases and government locations around the country. And at those particular operations, they will help you with understanding how to better bid, how to find more information, how to make your contacts, when and where you should make contact with prime contractors, etc. Another area of research is look for Inspector General reports that can identify problems that you might be able to solve for that agency. Learn about the agency's budget and how much money they have and where they're going to spend it in their functional areas. So when an opportunity presents itself, understand your value relative to the opportunity. Can you do it yourself, or should you team with somebody? If you're going to team, do you want to fill gaps with partners that will help you beat other team offers? Does your team uniquely solve the government's problem? Is it the right job for your company? Does the past performance give the customer confidence you can do the job? Understand what risks are involved and how would they be mitigated. Develop a competitive matrix and rank yourself against others who are bidding. The Office of Small Business Utilization, the SBU, is GSA's advocate for small minority and women business owners. Its mission is to promote increased access to GSA's nationwide procurement opportunities. Small business activities are supported by program experts at GSA headquarters and through small business centers at 11 different locations throughout the United States. If you look at this chart, you'll see how we've broken them down into specific SBA areas. These are called the government contracting regions. SBU activities make it possible for the small business community to meet contracting experts and be counseled on the process. This includes procurement, networking sessions, marketing strategies and technique workshops, electronic commerce, EDI training, interagency networking breakfasts, workshops for historically black colleges and universities, trade missions, roundtables, and procurement conferences. There are several reasons that a GSA officer may not use a GSA schedule. Let me correct that. There are several reasons a contracting officer may not use a GSA schedule as their preferred contracting method. The contracting specialist may fear losing his or her job due to a simplified job acquisition process, or they may not understand the full scope of professional services on schedules. There are some contracting officers and specialists who do not understand the capacity of the schedules. For example, Some contracting officers and specialists believe there's a limit on the dollar amount you can procure through schedules. In addition to the contracting specialist that does not or will not use the schedules, there are contracting staff that use the schedules but improperly. They place orders not correctly, and this creates different issues. And this can include contract specialists going outside the scope of the contract or not conducting fair competition. So, what is the formula to success? There is a formula. It's called P plus I plus R equals success, or planning, implementation, and response. Plan your plan, implement your plan, get response to your plan, and you will get success. Now, we want to thank you for attending today. If you want to proceed with going after more government contracts and you're either shorthanded or you need additional marketing support, we would love to be of assistance. We've been in the government marketing arena for almost 20 years, and we have provided marketing support starting at just $500 a month and up. So give us an opportunity to help. We are offering a number of documents free of charge that are on our website at www.gotowebinars.com/webinar-downloads. And there you will find, beginning tomorrow morning, about 20 different documents published by either agencies or other information groups that will help you in setting up your plans, creating your organizational groups, and making your decisions, or helping you guide you in your decisions about doing government marketing. Again, we want to thank you very much for being with us today, and please give us an opportunity to be of service to you. Good day.